Hello, everyone. Welcome. So sorry for the delay. We just had some few troubleshooting issues, but just to introduce myself, my name is Joanne. I am a community admin in the maintenance community with a community of over 3,700 maintenance and reliability professionals. You've probably seen me there. So we do hold a lot of discussions, live webinars, share a lot of resources and a lot more. So please join us if you haven't already. We'll probably put the link in the chat box next to the webinar. And we'll also be recording this webinar. It will be available as soon as we have it on demand, sometime at the end of this week. So you will be receiving an email with a link to access it. So I'm super excited for today's webinar. We have George Williams. He's the CEO and founder of Reliability X, and he'll be kicking off our career development fair on the power of continued learning. Before I pass the mic to him, first, I'd really like to thank him for just being the premium sponsor for this event. We wouldn't have been able to do it without him. So yeah, we really appreciate you, and we're really excited to see what you have to say in this event. And then just to go through a few housekeeping, at the end of the presentation, when we have some time, George will answer any questions you might have. And then, all right, that sounds great. So we're gonna hand it over to George to kick us off. And yeah, let's get started.
Awesome, thank you so much, Joanne. Okay, so we're going to talk about the power of continued learning. And what's interesting is, they approached me and asked me to do this kickoff. And this is such a great community. It's really hard to kind of describe how impactful and how important this community is in continued learning and all the things that they offer. So let me just do a brief introduction. My name's George Williams, founder and CEO of Reliability X. I have a master's degree in reliability engineering, CMRP, CRL, all those acronyms and fun stuff around vibration analysis and a bunch of predictive maintenance stuff. 2016 CMRP of the year. Certified reliability, black belt, all kinds of craziness going on. So yeah, really, I'm really that amazing. This is just who I am. And obviously I was born that way, right? I didn't have any learning whatsoever. So let's take a look at our community, because the community is really what this is all about. So I really want to just kind of dive right in here. We've got some absolute experts. I mean, just look, they've called themselves experts right next to their names. Says expert, expert, expert. There's just some amazing folks here. Look at, you got Ricky Smith. Ricky Smith is just a legend in maintenance and reliability. This guy puts out more content than Mr. Beast on YouTube. He just writes all day, all night. I got to imagine he's got like a time machine to go back and make his days longer, because he is such a big contributor. It's not even funny. Guy like Joel Levitt. Joel Levitt is one of the most amazing writers in maintenance and reliability. It's just absolutely amazing. Read everything you can that this guy publishes. And he publishes in some, not maybe mainstream magazines, things like Fleet Maintenance Magazine, all kinds of stuff you'll see his content in. And, if you ever go see this guy live, though, I can't even understand what's going on, because it's like a psychedelic trip. I did figure out, though, exactly how to sit through and understand everything that he's saying in a presentation. You just drop a little acid right after he's introduced. You drop the needle on Dark Side of the Moon, and then everything just makes sense. So then you got guys like Bob Latino. Bob Latino, what can you say about Bob Latino? I don't know, but it ain't going to be bad, because Bob looks like the kind of guy that'll jump in his pickup truck and come up here and break my legs, and I'll be doing a root cause analysis on it. Come back and say, hey, by the way, it was because I made that terrible joke. And he would come back up here, break both my arms, and say, that was not a systemic issue. It's about your bad joke writing and you drinking while you write your presentations. Then you got, we got Brian, Ryan, Dylan, and Blair. I mean, that looks like the 1993 index of baby names just vomited all over my slide deck. All right, and then we've got Radar. Radar is the humble one. Look at this, MRO expert. Radar, he just says, look, I'm an expert, but don't ask me questions about FMEA. Don't ask me questions that have nothing to do with MRO. But he still contributes. He's all over the place and writing all kinds of content on the maintenance community. And then you got me. Look at me. It just says far from expert. And this is a good indication that when they were deciding who was going to kick this off, everybody else was just busy between 1 and 2 p.m. Eastern time. And so I'm like the last person that they could possibly come to. So did these folks all start out as experts? Like, I doubt that they all started out as experts, right? All right, so let's take a look at what we've got going on. So Arthur Ashe said that start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And that's all any of us can do. You know, we all start out differently in life, and we're surrounded by folks that influence us throughout the entire journey. And some start out in great places and have lots of support, and some start off, you know, maybe without a support mechanism to help them. It's not really about necessarily where you start. The journey in life and the journey in continued learning is about the distance you travel and not necessarily where you start. This is where I started, Thompson and Dauphin, the Fishtown section of Philadelphia, inner city, row home. These are the actual signs from in front of my house that are now hanging in my basement. Because, I mean, when you grow up in the inner city, what do you do for fun? You rip street signs down and put them in your basement and hang them up. Some of us start out poor. Some of us start out with money. Some of us start out with a great support system. Some of us start out with, you know, really roadblocks and challenges in our home life. And it doesn't really matter, because it's not about where you start. It's the support mechanisms that surround you that help shape and mold you as an individual. This is a little personal, but that's the actual house I grew up in. Then it's off to kindergarten. And at kindergarten, you finally start to see some support mechanisms, at least if you grew up like I did. And this is Miss Stark. Oh my goodness, Miss Stark. She was an absolute angel. And me, being the introvert that I am, asked her to marry me in kindergarten. I walked right up to her, big old smile, and asked her for her hand in marriage. And her reply to me was, when you're a little older. And so I had hope. I had dreams. I had capability. I got something to look forward to. So let's see how my grade school academics went. Well, here's a report card. If not for anything, my mother liked to hoard things out. And so I have all my old report cards from grade school. And what you'll notice here is, I don't know, George is very talkative. I don't understand that as a problem. But apparently being talkative in school was a problem. Well, let's move on. Oh, here's another one. George is a very nice little boy, but he is talkative at times. Well, George likes to talk, doesn't he? Oh, here's another one. George memorized most of a poem, not all of it, most of it. And he needs to curb his talking. Oh, it gets better. George is starting to do an awful lot of talking. Now, this is like 3 years later, still in grade school, because you can see my math levels at like 7 and 8. I only went there till 5th grade. And George now is starting to do an awful lot of talking. Here we have a teacher that doesn't look at your records. So that was really helpful. And this is my all-time favorite. This one says, George needs to stop his talking so others can learn. Others need to learn. Now, isn't this where teachers are supposed to recognize your skills and talents and cultivate you and motivate you? I mean, they should have been sending me to Toastmasters and Dale Carnegie classes and all the things necessary to learn how to speak in front of an audience and deliver content, which, by the way, is exactly what I do for a living. So I had some talent. I had some hidden talent inside that, through the amazement of the Philadelphia Public School District, was being completely oppressed and suppressed and held back. So how do I find an outlet? What am I going to do as a kid? I mean, how am I going to get there? Well, I go to middle school, and middle school is where you open up. Middle school is where you start to make great friends, and you get more freedoms. You're not stuck in one class with one teacher, at least that's how it works in Philadelphia Public School. Now you get to wander hallways and talk to people in between classes. And it was really just an amazing experience. It was where I got my first taste of shop class and STEM and all that fun stuff. By the way, this is Mr. Tompkins. He's the soccer teacher. And when you're an outgoing extrovert like me, and you like to build relationships and talk, building relationships is important. In 7th grade, Mr. Tompkins and his wife had a baby girl. And so I jumped on the L and took a 6-pack of beer wrapped in a pink ribbon to Mr. Tompkins to congratulate him. That's right, 7th grade, 12 years old. My 8th grade yearbook says, George, thanks for the 6. Mr. T. Whoa, what do we got here? Oh, we're back to Miss Stark. Well, what do you know? In middle school, Miss Stark got transferred. And she became my 8th grade teacher. So you know exactly what I did, right? I walked right up to Mrs. Stark. She was my homeroom teacher for 8th grade. And I said, well, I'm a little older. And that's when it hit me. That's when I got a big dose of reality. Now, my wife saw this sign in a store she wanted to buy. And it says, dream until your dreams come true. Miss Stark told me that was BS. That sign should say, work until your dreams come true. You've got to put effort in. You've got to surround yourself with success. You've got to look and hunt down areas of opportunity. And so I was motivated now. I just realized I can't just be a dreamer. Dreamer isn't working. So we've got to do something more. And I found it in middle school. Throughout middle school, I was ripping things apart and trying to put them back together. Man, I was so into making sure that I was just tearing stuff apart and mostly putting all the pieces back together. And so I knew I needed to find a way to get into some type of STEM program. Now, we didn't necessarily call it that then, but I needed to find a high school that could help me thrive in an area I enjoyed. And the only place to do that in Philadelphia is Jules E. Mastbaum Area Vocational Technical School, or as we alumni call it, the Bomb. Looks more like a prison, sitting right in the middle of the Kensington section of Philadelphia. Look at that cage on the roof. After lunch, you'd go up on the roof and play soccer or basketball underneath of that cage. We didn't even have a home field. There was no sports fields. We had to take a bus somewhere to play, to practice soccer or have our games. There was no home field for this school. But what it did have was shop class. And that's where I started to get molded into my engineering background and the things I loved. And there were some really amazing people at this school and really talented teachers. This is my high school picture for the Vocational Industrial Clubs of America. These were the brightest students in that school that would compete against area schools in their shop class activities and skills. Really amazing group of people. We've got Mrs. Ross in the upper left-hand corner here. She was an English teacher, and I hate English. English was just droning for me. I couldn't take it, right? I'm a math guy, engineering person. I wanted everything except English class. And Mrs. Ross taught me that I had to be able to communicate. And I had to learn to write. And while writing is still not something I enjoy doing today, she taught me it was valuable. And I make a living communicating with people. So what she taught me is just an invaluable lesson. Sometimes lessons you learn don't happen right away. You don't realize they're a lesson until later in life. Miss Fletcher in the upper right-hand corner here, she was my algebra teacher. And anyone who's at algebra knows that inevitably somebody says, hey, what do I need algebra for? And Miss Fletcher gave me the most amazing piece of wisdom that I've carried with me my entire life. She said, you need algebra to pass my class and graduate. She gave me a dose of direct communication and a direct, just absolute understanding that sometimes you have to do things because they have to be done. And I didn't realize just how wonderful this wisdom was until later in life. And you've got, I mean, this is like, you know, no offense, I'm inner city. Look at this picture. You look at this and you're like, oh my goodness, it looks like, you know, these people aren't going to be successful. Most of the people I grew up with, a lot of them, no offense, they're dead on drugs or in prison. This school, not so much. This school had good educators. Even though we were all inner city kids, you got a guy like Kevin Benton. This is Kevin in the right next to his picture. Nice tall gentleman in the back. That's his IMDb account because he's an actor. You got Leslie Acosta. She's just lower and to the right of her photograph. U.S. House of Representatives. There are some amazingly talented people that come out of inner city schools. And it really is because of the community around them and the teachers that help cultivate those skill sets. And while my skill sets may have been misunderstood in grade school, they were allowed to flourish in high school. It takes a little bit more than just some skills and talents. You have to have a mentor. And most likely throughout your career, you'll have more than one mentor. This is John Williams. This is my father. Throughout high school, I worked at his place of business. He was a truck driver. And he taught me how, you know, he was a truck driver / mechanic. And he taught me how to weld. He taught me how to strip an engine down and hone cylinders and lap valve heads and all kinds of stuff. Just absolutely amazing. He gave me work ethic. He gave me true understanding. This guy was listening to valve taps with a stethoscope before I even knew what a predictive maintenance technology was. He taught me amazing things. Like if you're not sure if it's oil or transmission fluid leaking on the ground, just give it a taste. Transmission fluid's a little sweeter. Unfortunately, he didn't really tell me not to taste the green liquid, which explains a whole lot about my mental capacity. So now high school's done. And I am just, this is it, man. This is like, I'm ready for college. I'm going to be an engineer. Man, thank God I did not finish college and go become an engineer. Oh, anyway, I'm going on a straight path. I've got this now down. This is me. Like I literally have all of my goals mapped out. I'm not the kid that doesn't know what they want to do. I'm the kid that's got everything mapped out, and that's it. So the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I was going to create it. I laid down the track, man. I was going to Drexel University for electrical engineering, and I don't care what you did, nothing was going to take me off the track. Oh, we're back to that picture again. Oh, look at Miss Stark. She's so cute. And look at that little girl right next to her. So while my hopes and dreams didn't land me Miss Stark, it landed me the person in the photo with her. That's my wife, Billy. We grew up right across the street from one another. Had the same kindergarten teacher. That's just an amazing love story. We're still married today. And then, boom, there goes the train. We have two beautiful girls, and we need to work. We had them young, and college wasn't important anymore. And so it was the school of hard knocks for me. It was work your butt off because you got to put food on the table. This was a big dose of reality. My dreams, at least what I thought were my dreams at the time, came crashing down. I was completely disoriented. I had no direction. I didn't understand that life is a long journey. And you learn and you struggle and you get better and you get stronger because of it. And so I had to go get money. And so I went to work at the Philadelphia Macaroni Company. And this is a place in Norristown, PA, and obviously they make pasta. And I was an operator. I was packing boxes for a living. Here I am, graduated 10th in my class, graduated National Honor Society, made it into Drexel University, and I'm packing boxes. Don't judge anybody in the position they're in. You can learn from them. They have knowledge, experience. One day I come into work and I go up to my line and my line's acting all funky. It's letting the boxes pass the filler and then it's getting pinched by the cylinder. And so they're not filling, they're dumping half in the box and half on the floor. And the owner's son is up there messing around trying to figure it out. So I come up behind him and ask him if I could take a look at the ladder logic. And he told me to get back to my line. I didn't know anything about ladder logic. I took second place honors in that Vocational Industrial Clubs of America competition across the entire city and surrounding suburbs. So I let him fiddle for a little while, and then I went back around and asked him again. And that happened like 3 times. And he finally said, "You know so much, you fix it." And so I went through the ladder logic, found the timing associated with the pistons, and started adjusting those timings until they worked right. At that point, somebody in a leadership role has 2 options. They can praise you and thank you and look to help you move up in the company because they recognize talent, or their ego can get in the way. This gentleman happened to be an ego person. And so I couldn't stay there no more. I didn't make a friend. So I went to the Philadelphia Cricket Club. 1854, founding member of the U.S. Tennis Association, founding member of the U.S. Golf Association. This place in 1990 was $25,000 a year just to be a member. Really old building. You had to learn how to run, conduit through solid stone and all kinds of really interesting things. You weren't allowed to rip wood down. You had to reshape it with plaster or Bondo because you weren't allowed to replace anything. We still struggled at this time. So I was working here and I was cutting the ice over at the Wissahickon Skating Club where Mike Richter grew up. And then boom, we have our son, Evan. Evan's born with a chromosome disorder known as 22q deletion. He spends the first 4 months of his life in and out of neonatal intensive care. Wasn't even diagnosed until he was 4 months old. I would come home from work, go to CHOP, let my wife go home. I would sleep at CHOP till the morning. She would drop the girls off at school, come to the hospital, and then I would go to work for 4 months. Man, this kid taught me that happiness can be found anywhere. He did nothing but smile. Still does. So we were struggling. We were beat down and we needed some opportunity. And I saw an ad in a paper to be a maintenance technician at a pharmaceutical company. And I said to my wife, I'm going to go on that interview. And I took a day off and I went up to that interview, and the interview was for an outsourced service provider named Fluidics. And I'm sitting there with Jim, and Jim's reviewing my resume, and Jim says, well, I'd love to hire you, but I don't have a position open. And I said, Jim, I took a day off of work. You know what that means to me? What do you mean you don't have a position open? And Jim gets on the phone and he calls the carpentry shop. He says, hey, Brian, you still looking for a painter? And Brian says, yeah, I need a painter. Jim looks at me, says, you want to paint? I hate painting. I absolutely hate painting. And I said, yeah, of course I want to paint. Bristol-Myers Squibb is a Fortune 100 company. I'll take the job. And I took a job as a painter at night. And I took a $1 an hour pay cut when we were already struggling. I was losing money going here. But I knew that a company that size would have a much bigger opportunity than me working at the Philadelphia Cricket Club. And so I was a mechanic for a little while, became a planner, went from planning. We had great success at planning. And so they said, George, what do you know about reliability? And I said, nothing. And they started sending me to school. They were sending me everywhere. Infrared, vibration, ultrasound, Dale Carnegie classes, all kinds of stuff. This is just a fraction of the filing cabinet full of these that I have. They invested. So I found my purpose. Man, I'm the reliability specialist at BMS and their Hopewell facility. Man, highfalutin. And then he sat me down. They said, George, that ain't enough, man. You need a degree. It's not enough for you to just be where you're at. We can't keep promoting you. You need to go work, go get a degree. And so there I was, family and working on my degree. And it took a long time and a lot of effort. But in 2014, I earned that degree. And I got my master's degree in maintenance and reliability engineering from Monash University. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. My train was back on its tracks. Only it was better because I learned and struggled and got stronger. If I had done 4 years at Drexel, 5 years, I guess, at Drexel University, came out with an electrical engineering degree, I'd probably be at some drafting tables don't exist no more, but I'd be working in some CAD program, drawing integrated circuits somewhere. That's not me. This all happened for a reason. And so that's it. I got my degree. I mean, I'm Mr. Know-It-All. If you're not sure if I'm Mr. Know-It-All, go ask my wife. She'll tell you. Yeah, he's Mr. Know-It-All. At least he thinks he is. So where do we go from there? Oh, you mean I had to be nice at work too? I mean, I'm an inner city rough around the edges guy. I was notorious for writing scathing emails to put people in their place and tell them how I knew more than what they did. I was not a people person. And so I would get the annual sit down that said, hey, George, you got to work on your soft skills. And I had one of my bosses say, George, what is your goal when you write those emails? And I said, I don't know. What are you talking about? I'm trying to put him in his place and show him how right I am. And he said, but is that your goal? I mean, is your goal to just upset somebody and not get what you want? If you're looking for collaboration, if you're looking for exponential success surrounding you, then you have to understand your goal. You've got to get people on board and collaborate with people. So I had a Post-it note on my computer screen for years. It finished out probably the last, I'm going to guess, 8 years of my career at BMS, and the 3 years I was at B. Braun. There was a Post-it note on my monitor that said, what is your goal? And I would make sure to write all of my emails in such a way that I got what I wanted from the other person, or at least try to, attempt to, and to collaborate and exponentially create success around me. One of the best pieces of advice I ever had. So what I need you to understand is that you never stop learning. And it's not just because you take a class. Some of it is direct and intentional. But you don't stop learning because life never stops teaching. There are scenarios in your life today that will teach you a lesson, whether it is an immediate lesson or whether it is a lesson that you learn and understand 10 years later. But they're all opportunities. Opportunities to grow, opportunities to succeed, opportunities to just expand your knowledge. And we want to take those opportunities. As I reflect on my personal and professional growth, I realized that it took a community to shape who I am today. And we only looked briefly at my professional career. we looked mostly at stuff like grade school. Imagine all the learnings that happened since then. And that I'm looking forward to learning tomorrow and the other tomorrows. It takes a community for us to learn. We're talking about Miss Stark, Mr. Cowie, Miss Fletcher, Mrs. Ross, Mr. Coviello, John Williams, Maureen Gribble, Marie Getzig, Mark Gowie, Blair Frazier, Paul Crocker, Durga Toddy, Mike McVicker, George Weitengruber, Uday Hardikar, Pete DeRocco, Henri Selma, Piero No, Eric Newhard, Michele Acerno, Vincenzo Servazio, Luis Laraquante, Luis Cotto, Waldemar Rivera, Ricky Smith, Joel Levitt, Joe Anderson, Ron Moore, Max Smith, Suzanne Greenman, John Mowbray, Steve Turner, Doc Palmer, Ramesh Gulati, James Reyes Picknell, Keith Mobley, John Fortin, Dave Bartoloni, Cliff Williams, Klaus Block, Rajiv Anand, Jason Ballantyne, Joel Leonard, Howard Penrose, Adrian Messer, Sonia Mathura. Without all of those folks and so many more, I'd have just been that kid with that electrical engineering degree standing in the street. You may be standing where you're standing today, and you are here, but it is not the end of your journey. Each and every day, you get to choose different paths. Each and every day, you get to either learn lessons or ignore them. Each and every day, you can engage people and understand their experiences and how they gain the knowledge they have, or you can walk right past them. All it takes is hello to open up a door. So you may be standing here today, but you have an amazing opportunity over the next 3 days to collaborate, to learn, to gain knowledge, to ask questions. And I encourage you to take advantage of that. What you have to remember is that this community is here for you. Its sole existence and purpose is to bring each other up. So take an opportunity. Continue to stay engaged in the maintenance community. And just remember, we are here for you. I hope you enjoy the next 3 days. I hope you attend as many sessions as you possibly can. And I hope that next year, you're one of the people that are presenting. So welcome to this year's community fair.
Awesome. Thank you so much, George. I really appreciate all you had to say about your life. That was really cool. So we're nearly at the end. We have about 20 minutes left, actually. So we do have a few questions, and for anyone else that does want to have any questions they want to post, feel free to do so. But I have 2 questions here, and they're a little bit similar. But Joel Leonard and Bill Bartow, both of them said, what can we do, and how can we build the pipeline of the current talent and the next generation?
Well, so Joel, nobody does this better than Joel does. So Joel, I know you probably can't speak, but for those of you that need information, look Joel up, connect to him on LinkedIn. He is a maker, and I don't know if everybody understands what he means to the maker community, but he is so active in bringing kids into STEM and drives around the entire country with this gigantic hammer, his Thorminator, and motivates kids to move into engineering. I don't know anybody better at making sure that they can impact the youth as much as Joel Leonard does. But I encourage all of you to do whatever you can in that space, because he is just lighting it on fire. Reach out to him, connect to him on LinkedIn, and by all means, go to a local community college, go to a local high school, and see if they have maker spaces, and get involved in that. Especially if you have a background in actual maintenance, and can fix more than a sandwich, you can certainly help that community.
Yeah, I know that hammer that you're talking about as well. It's a huge hammer. But awesome. Another question we had from Ahmed Bashir is, what is your advice to an experienced person? He has about 39 years of experience in the lubricant business, but he wants to learn more and more. So I guess like, what are some ways that he can continue on doing so?
So there's just worlds of content that exist. I think some of the easiest content you can find is by going to some of the websites for guys like Ricky Smith or YouTube channels and absorb some of the videos. Now, I don't know, is he looking for expanding on lubrication or outside of lubrication? Expand as much as you can. And this is in no way, shape, or form a discussion about the person that just commented. But there's a big difference between, 20 years of experience and 1 year of experience 20 times. I'm a big proponent of trying to have as many different experiences throughout a year as you possibly can.
Cool. Awesome. Let me see if we have any other questions. I guess I have one question for you, and I know like the entirety of your presentation was, how we can use continued learning throughout different stages of our life and how it applies to your career as well. But to you, what do you think is most important? Is it stepping outside of your comfort zone? Is it developing human relationships, trying new things? Building culture, finding opportunities? What would you say is like the one thing that you will remain true to your heart and what you would give advice for others as well?
Mentor other folks and get yourself mentors.
Gotcha.
There has to be, if I look back, and even in today, when you go to college, they're not teaching you how to speak in front of a room full of people. They're not teaching you how to build relationships. They're not teaching you those skills. And those are the skills that help your trajectory in your career. And even beyond your career, just your personal growth. Some people are not extroverts, they're introverts, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean they have to have closed doors in front of them. Teaching somebody the skill to crack a door open just to begin that step may be a big, valuable lesson for folks that are more on the introverted side. I think, for me, it's finding people to help mentor you in areas where you have the self-value enough to identify you have a gap, and then go get people that can help you close that gap. In exchange of that, you need to be mentoring others, because if we don't mentor others, the skills gap we have now is just going to continue to get worse and worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that does kind of transition into the rest of this week. We'll be going into the skills gap. We'll be going into mentorship and leadership. So yeah, everything that you're saying is definitely on point. And I have one more question from Edward. He says he's been in the School of Hard Knocks for a long time. How important is the acronyms behind your profile name? And I think this is I'm assuming he's talking about.
Yeah. So here's my advice for people that are struggling. You're worth whatever somebody's willing to pay you. So always be looking. Always look for an opportunity that best suits you. Don't be afraid to leave where you're at. You have skills, and there are companies that invest in people, and there are companies that either don't or only invest a little. And if you find yourself in a position where you're in an organization that is not investing in you, find another organization. And that may sound scary, but trust me, you're going to be okay. Find an organization that's willing to invest in you. And the other piece is, yes, the acronyms mean something in this industry. I'm not suggesting they give you the wealth of knowledge necessary to be an expert, but they do mean something. In terms of a degree, nobody cares where your degree's from unless it's Ivy League or the first company you ever interview with. Outside of that, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Another question from Dufan is, what's your advice to those that are not as experienced, but they're willing to get into it / try it for the first time?
So I'm not quite sure what it is. There wasn't, let me see.
I think it's more so like they they aspire to do something, but they're technically not as experienced,
Yeah.
how would they do so?
So what's interesting is I had a kid that was living next to me who went into the Marines, and he went into the Marines and learned how to be a helicopter mechanic. And he came out of the Marines and he had no idea where to go or how to start a career. And I said, hang on a second. I think I'm connected to somebody at Boeing on LinkedIn. And I reached out this person at Boeing and I said, hey, look, I know we don't really know each other, but I got a kid living next to me, just came out of the Marines, aviation mechanic for helicopters. What advice can you give them? And they connected on LinkedIn, and that guy helped mentor him to what does he need on his resume? Does he need any other schooling? What does he have to do? I would say, as hard as it may be, yes, you have to jump out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to find a mentor. They don't just come falling out of the sky. Go actively find somebody who's in a position where you would like to traject yourself to, and talk to them about that. What was your career path like? And they're not all the same, believe me. There's a lot of success stories and a lot of folks that are going to share content this week that have a very dramatic, different path than I had. No better, no worse, just different. And so their experiences are different, their personalities are different, and their passions are different. But find mentors that can help you take the next step. And I also wouldn't beat yourself up if taking the next step takes 1 year versus 3 months. The learning process is the learning process. Don't rush it.
Awesome. Let me see if there's any other questions. Dufan says, thank you. He's really grateful. We're just about the end of our time. George, do you have any last words you want to say?
This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate this. Is actually the first time I've delivered a keynote address, so hopefully it wasn't too disappointing. And you guys enjoy the rest of your session. I appreciate it very much, and good luck this week.
Thank you, George. And thank you for everyone for joining today's keynote. And thank you, George, for kind of going above and beyond with this presentation and answering the questions that our community had. For everyone else that is continuing on with our event, head to the community Slack. We'll be having a webinar discussion in the CDF Webinar Watch channel. But yeah, thank you so much. We'll see you there. Bye-bye now.